welcome to the Bitesize training. It's about the toolkits that we can use for accessible services. My name's Sue Parker. I am the Enabling All Coordinator, and hopefully this will be really useful. I, previous to the recording, sent out 2 documents, which hopefully you've had a look at or able to check see. Let me share my screen, and then you can see what they look like. So that's a welcome from me. So we've got a resource pack for churches that's been on the website for quite a long time. I am renewing it at the moment, so it's off the website to make sure that I've got it as clear as possible, using the best words possible as well. And this is a document that can be used for welcomers mainly. It's a set of about 7 or 8 things that can be made into posters or kept as a booklet at the back of church, to be a sort of a cue set for thinking, oh, what do I do if someone's dyslexic, or what do I do if someone has vision impairment? And what we've done is make another document called the Toolkits for Accessible Services. And these ideas were gathered from everybody's knowledge, who were part of the planning team for the Celebrating Neurodivergence that we did October, about a year ago now. So those are the 2 things that we're going to look at. I'll start with this toolkit for accessible services because I'm hoping that this will only be about half an hour long. If you have any questions, please do ask them in the chat, and we'll also have a non-recorded session of answering questions. And of course, I'm always available on the enabling.all.lichfield.anglican email to answer any questions or to change things that are need to be changed, because we are a learning space, not we always have new ideas. So what I'd like to start with is a video that you might recognise some people on from the service, and that explains why we did the service and what we did in the service, which makes shortcut some of the things that I will talk about in a minute. I'm hoping it works.
When we talk about neurodiversity, it's the wonders of how all our brains are different.
People who are neurodiverse are those who are autistic, who have ADHD, who have Tourette's, and a whole range of other unique and wonderful things about them, their character and their gifts, that mean that they may communicate in different ways, they may need to access worship and liturgy in different ways, and the service today is intended to cater for that.
The whole idea of this service is to bring people together and recognise that we're all made in God's image and we all have wonderful gifts.
I have ADHD, and that is how God made me. It wasn't a mistake. And that comes with gifts in some areas and limitations in another. But we are all a mixture of gifts and needs, aren't we?
We're able to do things differently. So we may be very creative, but not very good at words and writing. Or we may be very focused or exceptional at some things and not at others. Or we may have a brain that people can dismiss very easily as not being capable, but actually God's created all of us, and we're all meant to be on the earth, regardless of, even if we can talk or not, we can still give and receive, and that makes us human. So what we're doing here is providing a service that everybody's accepted. So that means that we are tracking the service, so people have got a visual timetable of what's happening.
We are doing things such as making the language simpler for people to understand and joining the service.
And each sections of the prayers are designed to encourage people to access those. So even though some people will have reasons why they can't necessarily access all of them, there might be something to look at, something to listen to, something to touch, something to smell, something to taste. I'm doing a very, very simple sensory story of Moses and the burning bush.
It's a way of celebrating and owning that truth that we are that mixture, but that we don't have to hide that. So we have invited people to be creative in how they worship. How do you want to worship? Do you want to walk around? Do you want to stand up? Do you want to hold? Does it help to hold things or smell things or feel things? Or do you need a space to go and take a break throughout services? Will that help you to worship? So we've got a wonderful quiet space. We've got multi-sensory zones. We've got a beautiful garden outside.
I was asked to come and take part in setting up this service and to do some Makaton signing, and to bring some craft materials and flags and things for people to use for their worship. There's a lot of people not coming because they can't manage the pattern of sitting down still and quiet for quite long periods of time. We often have to do a lot of reading, which some people, can't join in with. So we're perhaps, typical church is perhaps quite exclusive in a way, because it only caters for a certain group of able-bodied people.
It is, however, very, very easy to get overwhelmed with the many things that folk will see that we're doing today. The key message I would give to parishes is start with just one thing. Try one thing that you can practice with and play with and figure out if that works for your congregation. And if and when you're ready, do a second thing. It's really important to find out what needs there are in the congregations. It's also important to try something anyway.
My church in Wolverhampton, St Matthew's, has been part of the Diocese Enabling All Award schemes. It's taken 3 actions on every year. So this year, one of them is looking at worship and making that more inclusive, demonstrating to the public. As a church, we welcome anyone who's neurodivergent or neurotypical. Is a good thing.
So there is a need for our services to be less complex and an ability to feel comfortable in the service with however you need to express yourself.
Well, let me on to the next slide is the question. Please don't start again. Technical, I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute so I can sort it out. There we go. I apologise, the joys of technicality. There we go. I've got you on screen. I can start the... Hope you could all hear that. So what I want to reiterate is what Charlotte is. This is not about doing everything that you possibly can. It's about finding what fits your church. It may be that you're doing a special service and you need some pointers, and these are that set of pointers if you need them. Maybe that you're looking for one thing to change, or you've got somebody who needs some reasonable adjustments, and you can find them here in either of the documents that we've got. What I'd like to start with is the principles that undergirded, that were part of why we were central to why and how we did the service that we did. First thing to say is that if you're doing a service, and the thing that we held close is we had to really examine what our image of God was, meaning that it's easy to assume that God has my abilities and looks like me, or looks like a picture that I've seen in the Bible, in my children's Bible when I was young, or Jesus had the same attributes as me. He didn't. He was a man. He was Middle Eastern. And also, when we're talking about that, we can all easily assume that God and has the same abilities as me, and we accidentally reflect those in what we say and what we do and how we do them when we lead, worship, and preach. So it's just checking that we don't assume that God is a neurotypical God or has the same human attributes of hearing in the way we do and the way some people don't. Being aware of that and just examining ourselves, having a point of reflection before you start a service. The central guiding principle is ensure that you include people with personal insight. That could include anybody that you know that you think would be welcome to your service, especially if it's on a specific topic. But also maybe people who have experience of it in a different way, parents, teachers, care workers. Also, another guiding principle is to think through who could be coming or who we would like to come, or in a wild world, who will be coming. And look at the barriers that people may face. And you will see that through the material when we talk through it, that we have systematically worked through the barriers that we could put up accidentally. There is the challenge that there may be competing needs. And I heard somebody the other day talk about autistic people with autism, who some people like loud stimulation, lots of lights, lots of music, really loud. And some people who have autism like it to be quiet and still. So even in one group of people, those individuals will have different needs. And it's the same with many other differences or diagnoses. So it's always a balance, and we will work towards those people that are coming and we are hoping to expect. Also, tell people what you can do and what you can't do. If you can't change your church, which is, don't worry. Tell people that you can't change. There are steps at your church. They're too steep. There isn't another exit or entrance. Tell people so that they don't turn up and get disappointed. But also, it also shows that we've thought through your needs. We are caring for you. We want to welcome you. So let's move on to the toolkits that we've worked through. We've looked at venue considerations. We've looked at publicising the service. We've looked at hybrid services. Looked at finding useful, available resources, things that are going to be in the space and you want to bring into the space to be used in the service. Looking at sort of a list of reasonable adjustments. Then looking at the specifics of welcoming if you're doing a accessible service or service with some element of accessibility. And then looking at the service content. So I'll move on quite quickly. This is a list of venue considerations that we did when we had to choose. We had the luxury of choosing a space to have our service. The space we chose didn't have everything that we needed, but this was the criteria that we looked through. Accessible toilets, step-free access, loop systems. If there was a quiet space to retreat to during the worship. Car parking with reserved spaces near the entrance, public transport. Flexibility of the seating so that we could make sure that everybody could access the service. We also wanted to do a hybrid service so that meant that if people couldn't make it, then they could come to the service. So that meant good Wi-Fi, which is what let us down for our service. We also needed extra screens and the knowledge of how to do those extra screens, especially for people with vision impairment. we did large print service sheets, and we had wanted a church that could have clear signage of moving around the building, and also especially going to the toilets and moving back to the worship space. So once we decided where we're going, we needed to have service promotion. We needed to tell people what was happening and what we were able to, who we were able to welcome. Of course, this can partly be done through how you describe your service, as in the element that I said before, that some people like loud because it is helpful to stimulate their senses, and some people like quiet. You can say that in your description of the service. It could be a lively service, or it could be a reflective service. It's also, whenever you're doing service promotion, it's really important to have pictures so that people can see the size. I'll give you an example in a moment. And they need to know how to get there, the parking, the public transport, whether it's step-free access or whether you've got a ramp, what type of accessible toilets there are. So I know this is a wish list. So I've put changing places toilets on the wish list because I know that these are rare. But wouldn't it be amazing if we had a church with a changing place toilet in it? And then also a social story. Let me show you what those are. So we were at St Martin's in Walsall. So this was information that I sent to the web team at St Martin's so that it was available on their website. It's taken from other venues, especially Martin's in the Field, if you want to look up how it's well done there to get around their space and to know how to get to their space and what their space offers. So here you can see I showed a picture of the church, showed all the public transport, how to get there, the address, how to get there driving, arrival with Zoe in the picture to show how large the door is. And then talking about step-free access and moving around the space. Going on to showing what the accessible toilet is like, and then saying that we can have a supply of water for the guide dogs, and we will do service sheets and newsletters in a large font in the induction loop. So then it goes through the facilities for different groups of people: visitors with mobility issues, visitors, and talk about onto the dais, so that if someone's coming to preach, they'll know how to get, whether they can preach from the usual space or they have to find a compromise. Also, visitors with hearing issues, visitors with sight issues, visitors with cognitive impairment, visitors with children. So that's the information that I sent to St Martin's that we'd love on their website. Or it could have been that we produced a leaflet that was downloadable. Also, I talked about a social story, which we prepared and was available to have. Again, it could be something downloadable. These are used by people that normally have learning difficulties or need a structure of what's going to happen when they get there. It can be used. I find it useful because it tells me what's going to happen. And that's what we did. We used Makaton symbols. I'll come into more information about how you do this, but also here's a picture of a church, St Thomas's in Aldridge, and they have them available as you come in to be used, and different services for them have different. But they're very simple, just saying what's happening in the service. It's useful beforehand for people to have that.
Different now. There's
and also
next,
which could be used before a service, but we used it in the service. So moving on to hybrid services, the next toolkit that we have available. Thinking about hybrid services, we've actually done a bite-sized training on this, so I'm not going to spend much time on it. but it was looking at what we wanted to do and how we wanted to include people. We wanted it to be an accessible service, so we chose Zoom so that there was a level of interaction that was available, and we planned that into how we were going to do the service and how we were going to lead those people. So moving on to another toolkit that's possible. What do you have in the space other than what you need for the service? So we added sensory toys, fidget toys, colouring sheets for adults as well as children, flags, passion instruments, activity sheets that were based on the theme, a sensory room. We actually had a prayer garden available at this church, so that was also something that was advertised to people. We had headphones to quieten the noise, and we had craft available during the whole service. This was, and we encouraged people to use any of these at any point. So another toolkit that we've developed is reasonable adjustments. This goes through a list of all the things that we changed or had available for our service. We had a row of seating near the front, right at the front row, with a screen in front of it. We reserved the seating for those with vision impairment, and we added that onto the reserve signs. It was a screen that showed the PowerPoint that was on the higher screen that people may not have been able to see. We booked a trained BSL interpreter for the whole service, and we also had another set of seating near the front, in front of the BSL interpreter, to be able to see the signing that was being interpreted in. And we organised that through the Reverend Susan Myatt. If you have the availability, there is another language that's used by people with learning disabilities, and that's Makaton. So we had the option of a Makaton signer as well. And in this case, the Makaton signer signed all the songs. You can sign the whole service if you want, if you have that capacity, or you could use Makaton songs that are online. There are some groups, Count Everyone In, Dougie Dug Dug, and Singing Hands, that also signing hands, that do some Makaton signs that you could use in your church service that included a Makaton element in them. We also made sure that in the hybrid service, the closed captions were enabled. And then we also did, can you see at the bottom of this screen, I'll show you the example that we actually used. I got, because we were using a Makaton signer, we were able to use Makaton signs, but you can use any signs, and they're normally available, a widget sign or from clip art. And what we did was track the service through these signs. I'll show you an example. So this was our welcome sign. As you can see, the welcome is the biggest along on the left. Can't do my left and right. On the left. And that reduced in size until when the next thing happened, which was singing, it actually disappears. So you know where you are in the service just simply by the signs underneath. Wasn't mentioned at all, but if people use signs, it's really useful. We also used the signs, repeated the signs in the live. This can be really useful for people with cognitive impairment, learning difficulties, people who don't speak English. It's a good idea to do it's one of those simple ideas, if your system allows it, that you can add to any service really quickly and easily. And all of us benefit from knowing where we are in the service and what's happening now and next. Moving on to more reasonable adjustments. We made sure that any visuals that were displayed had clear fonts and dyslexia friendly fonts and colours, and we've got an available something that you can download that can clarify those for you. As I said, we've had a social story available. Talks about the visual timetable, which is now and next, and can be things that pull off and pull on if people find that better than the now and next at the bottom of the screen. We had reserved wheelchair spaces where there was also space for sit by your friends. I completely understand that this is easier to do if you don't have queues, and I know that this can be quite a challenging in some churches how to do it, but it's worth working through the solutions. The church naturally has good signage, so that directs people from around the space and to the toilets and back again. That's especially useful if you've got a cognitive impairment, for instance, dementia, sorry. If you've got dementia, you can go to the toilet and not know where to go back. Actually, all of us can get a little lost, especially in a foreign place that we're not comfortable with. So please have toilets have signs outside the toilet saying which way to go afterwards. Then we had different versions of the PowerPoint printed on a service sheet. We had dyslexia-friendly fonts and coloured papers. We then had large print versions, and all of those were available with the welcomers. We made sure that the loop system was working. Also be aware of noise levels, because if you've advertised a quiet service, then please make sure that the noise levels are comfortable. We had natural light is often better than electric lights. We had a space that had lots of windows, but again, that's not always a possibility to change. If you are having flags available, then and you know that you don't know the group of people that are coming, or people seem a bit reticent, make sure that somebody is very comfortable at leading that you've primed somebody beforehand. I was one of those people that grabbed a flag and because I'm very comfortable worshipping that way as well. But it meant that other people joined in a lot easier than giving permission and anticipating that people would like to do that. We're nearly finished. So we've nearly finished through the toolkits. This is the last but one. Looking at welcome, we realised that it's really important to have focus on our welcome. This came in two ways. Focusing on the welcomers, that were people who were present in the church, that they really knew what all those adaptations that we'd added. So they were briefed before the service. We didn't assume that they knew because they'd been involved in the planning. We made sure that they knew. You also, Hidden Disability Sunflowers have a Can I Help You badge, which we have available. You can get them from us. And there's also the Welcomers pack that I will talk about in a moment, that gives information for welcomers if they feel stuck, a quick checklist for them. Another thing that we realised was really important was a formal welcome from the front, giving people permission, as I've said before. We expect to behave a certain way in church. Even if you're not able to behave that way in church, you still feel that you should be behaving in that way in church. So let's throw that expectation out and set new expectation. Tell people everything that's available in case I've missed it, and give them permission to use them, whether it's something that is new to them or not. Also explain what's coming up in the service. And something that can be added to all services is just acknowledging that we expect people to behave and move in a certain way. We normally ask people to sit and stand at certain points. Great in the welcome to welcome people by saying that during this service, we may have times that we suggest that you sit, kneel, or stand. However, please feel free to adopt whatever position is most comfortable for you. It's absolutely fine if you sit throughout the service. If you stand or move around at any point, please do whatever is best for you. We're a worshipping community. Let's enable people to worship. So important if you're doing a hybrid service, to acknowledge where people are visible on camera, because some people may not be able to be on camera or on social media. It's really important to have signs up, and also in the formal welcome to say what's happening. So moving on to the other pack that we had, you may have heard of it, you may not. It comes from the Church of Ireland Youth Department, and we've adapted it. And it also comes from the Diocese of Leeds. So I'll just quickly go through this. Oh, no, I'll leave that to the end. I do apologise. That is just saying this is the welcome pack and what it looks like. So the final toolkit that we've pulled together is something looking at the service content. Now, you may not have a choice of how your service, the content is, but this is breaking down the different things that we considered. The music, the Bible reading, the talks, the prayers, and most importantly, the coffee time that often gets forgotten. So music was a really thorny issue for us. We had many different needs. We had a worship leader that wanted to bring the most, their best music to God. We had people who were in our group and were we hoped to come, who wouldn't actually necessarily be able to connect to the worship that we were using. So we needed to make sure that the language didn't hurt anybody. And so things like stand up to, oh no, let me look at my notes to get it right. There we go. So could be, I was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. So that may equate, people do read into this that it equates human blindness for sin. So if you do want to use that, look at an alternative, especially if it's copyrighted. Sorry, if it's not copyrighted, that means it's less than 70 years old. If you can't change the words, please be aware of the words and find a different song is what we decided to do and what was best. Also, again, looking at those guiding principles. Don't assume that God has the same physical features as humans. Also, don't have songs that assume that something's normal for all human beings. So stand up for Jesus when not everybody can. Use clear language. So sometimes our language is very complex, and it can, when you're singing it, you find it hard to understand. If you find it hard, many other people find it hard. That's not easy if you're wanting an accessible service and welcoming people who really want to connect to and worship Jesus. You're excluding them from the worship. Also, there's metaphors that are not everybody understands. Avoid words that are childish. Change to something like childlike. We love alleluia, 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 praise you the Lord. Got very easy signs, but it's also something that everybody enjoys, and everybody can join in with if they want to. Hopefully you're using signers. If you're using signers, please check with the signers, because they are translating something into a different language, and that may be difficult to put across or very difficult to sign. So get them involved early doors, make sure that you can know that they are understanding, that they can sign the song that you've chosen. Looking at talks, it can be different voices, different styles. It's a chance to be creative. Probably needs to be short. We used different interviews with different people, and we also used an interactive element. We then prayers. We looked at a number of different prayers and ended up with sensory prayers. Online, there are lots. If you look at finger prayers, body prayers, posture prayers, sensory prayers, you will come up with lots of ideas. But Reverend Charlotte Cheshire made up her own, and they're wonderful, and they're also online as well. And the last thing that needs to be considered is coffee time. You don't think that. You think, oh, everybody loves being social, but not everybody loves being social in a loud space where you can't always hear people. So think through your coffee time. Be inclusive and flexible. Aware of food intolerances or preferences or diagnoses, things like diabetes, and have some sugar-free options. Have some gluten-free or vegan decaf coffee. Think about the flexibility of the space. Is there, when the space is full of people, is it going to be overwhelming due to noise levels? Is there a way of separating off the coffee so that people are welcome to have coffee in different spaces? And also be aware that the need to sit or stand can be uncomfortable for some. Coffee time is a chance to interact with each other. Some people aren't always comfortable with interacting. Give people the alternatives so that they can be as comfortable and as welcome as possible. What we discovered is having activities in that space as well. We had a feedback space, which meant that you could not necessarily wait around wanting to talk to somebody. You could be doing things and a conversation could start up that way. So that is the new information. I'll just do a very quick showing of what the resource pack is that we've had online for a long time. It gives information about the use of it. And as it says, no one size fits all, perfect church, not there. But there are small things that we can do to ensure that all who come are welcome. Display these at your church or in the hall, use them as an audit for your PCC. You can use this information however you want. It can be printed out. So it goes through different things that people who are dyslexic, for instance, might find easy and might find challenging if they're done. So don't use large blocks of text. For instance, you can read all this. What to do and what don't to do for each individual. If someone comes in is hearing impaired or deaf, here's what you do, here's what you don't. And it continues through vision impairment, autism, neurodiversity and cognitive disorders, mobility issues, wheelchair users, those with anxiety and mental illness, those with dementia, and those with asthma and allergies. All of these have a bite-sized training on. So if you want to look more into these different issues, then we have information on these. We have videos on these. People living with chronic pain or chronic illness. And then that's it. I will stop the share. Has anybody got any questions that they'd like to ask at the moment before I stop the video? I'll stop the video.